Welcome to Stellar Reflections, the space where astrology meets real life. I'm Georgina Sierra, here to explore the cycles, crossroads, and inner seasons that shape who we become. Whether you're stepping into adulthood, navigating midlife, or entering a new chapter of wisdom, you'll find insights, stories, and cosmic guidance to help you understand your path. This is a place for all people, all identities, and all phases of life. So no matter where you are on your journey, you're welcome in this space. Welcome everyone to this first episode of Stellar Reflections. I'm Georgina Sierra and I'm super excited to have you here. Whether you're cooking, doing your housework, driving along, stuck in endless, mindless traffic going, oh my God, what a waste of a lifetime. Or trying to go to sleep. I'd be honored if I can put you to sleep, to be honest, because sleep is such a commodity when you're a parent. You don't realize that until you become one. I welcome you here. I have created this podcast as a motivation for blending astrology, storytelling, and lived experience, especially through the lens of midlife and beyond. Now, I did say midlife and beyond, but if you are in your 20s, a teenager, in between, it doesn't really matter. Wherever you come from, whatever age you are, however you identify as, you're welcome. I'm here to talk about everything with astrology. I have Pluto right near my North Node and my Sun. So I'm one of those people where total strangers talk to me about anything, and I don't know why. I once had a lady stop me and my mum while we were at the shops and she told me about her incontinence issues. No, really, truly. Didn't faze me at all. I've had total strangers tell me, and I'm not talking about in client sessions only, about a lot of things. Don't know why, but I don't mind because you end up having these amazing conversations. And you know how you're with a really great friend and you haven't seen each other forever. And when you do see each other, it's like a day has not passed since you last met them. And when you sit down, you catch up and you have these amazing conversations, these deep things where you're like, oh my goodness, if someone could only hear us, the things we're saying, it would make a great podcast. Well, that's what I'm here for now. Of course, this is a solo episode, so I'm talking to you. Would that be classified as talking to myself? Anyway, I'm thinking out loud. But that's what I want from this podcast, where we can talk astrology, where we can talk about the woo-woo, we can talk about anything. No holds barred. Of course, we're not going to talk rudely about anyone. We're not going to be discriminatory. We're not going to be racist or anything like that. I'm talking about the core things and themes in life that people don't talk about. That's what I want to talk about. And for those of you that aren't in the cycles that I'll be talking about, I highly encourage you to listen. Not just for me to get ratings, but, I wish when I was younger, people would tell me what is coming. Not in a bad way. There's nothing particularly bad about it, but if you're not prepared, it's more shocking. Let me explain. When I was probably my late 20s, I remember I went to a work lunch with all these other colleagues, all ladies, everyone over 40. Most of them were in their 50s and 60s, and I remember one of my friends and work colleagues, she just turned 40. And I remember this conversation quite vividly. And she said, now that I'm 40, I just don't give a beep. I say what I want. I just don't have time for all this crap that's going on around me. And all the other women were like, oh yeah, I was the same when I hit that age. Absolutely. And wait till you get older. It gets better. And I'm like, ooh, I'd love a little bit of that. And they're like, you're not even 30 yet, honey. You need to get to 40 to get this. You will only feel this when you're 40. Now, I thought I was cheated there. I was like, I want that now. But, they were kind of right. And I didn't understand why. And they wouldn't explain to me why. Did they know why themselves? I don't know. But for me, once I hit midlife, things really changed and I didn't understand why. I felt lost. I felt like a rug had been pulled under me, like I'd been hit by a Mack truck. At some point, my career just went to crap, and I'm talking the conventional 9-to-5 job. And I even tried to follow my dreams, and that didn't work out. Imagine one of your core dreams in your life, and it doesn't work out. Yeah, it was a bleak time. It felt like, and I've said to my clients, I was in between two mountains of black onyx, these sharp mountain peaks. You couldn't climb up them. There was nothing to grab onto. And I had slid down one into a valley of quicksand. And I was up to my neck. And I felt like I was drowning. And the more I struggled, because that's what happens in quicksand, when you struggle, you drown, you go under. The more I struggled, the more I couldn't get out. I couldn't get to the other side of this valley just to get my life back up again. It was a bleak time, and if it wasn't for my family, for my partner, for my support systems around me, I don't know. I don't know how I would have been. But I remember Googling, what do you do when your life has gone to shit? Excuse my language. There might be a bit of profanity in this podcast. It makes it a little bit interesting. And a video came up of a Marine, I believe he was an admiral. He was a very senior ranking officer in the United States Marine Corps. And you might have come across it. And he said, when your life has gone to shit, for want of a better word, you're going to do one thing. And if you don't know what to do with your life, you're going to make your bed. Yeah, that's simple. Make your bed every day. Because when you make your bed every day, you accomplish something in that day. You could spend the rest of the day on the couch watching Netflix and eating popcorn. Who knows? But you accomplish something. The next day, you're going to do the same thing. And I did that. And eventually, I found my way to my life purpose. While my professional career and my dreams went down the gurgler, up until that point, my personal life had been down the gurgler. But since that stopped, my personal life came out of the gurgler. It was a fountain. It was flourishing, finally. Probably like in that movie Under the Tuscan Sun. Have you seen that movie? Oh, I highly recommend it. It stars Diane Lane, and she's this gorgeous professor, probably in her midlife too, a writer, and she finds out that her husband's cheating on her and he leaves her with his mistress, and she ends up going on this gay tour of Tuscany and finds a villa there, renovates it, and builds her life again. And she knows she has built her life because this stubborn tap in the hallway would not work. And when everything was aligned, it burst and was overflowing. Her personal life was overflowing. She was on her right path, but she had to take one day at a time and start from scratch. And while for a lot of us that feels like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? I can't live if that happens. There is actually light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember at the time thinking, if I ever go on maternity leave, I'm going to study astrology. And I did. My firstborn was 6 months old, and I was like, right, as much as I love taking care of my baby, I need to do something with my life. I need something for myself. And I remember Googling astrology schools in Sydney, and I came across the Sydney Astrology School. I messaged Mark, who's my wonderful teacher, Mark Lawrenson, and he said, you're in luck. It was a Sunday. I remember it was a Sunday, and it was in the middle of 2018 roughly. And he said, my level 1 class is about to start, which actually it's going to start tomorrow. You missed out on the early bird, but I have a couple of spots left. Well, I messaged my husband, who's an Aquarian, and he agreed because, I was pretty much the primary carer of our child. And I said, look, when you're home, it is in the evenings, a couple of hours a week. I'll do the homework. Please watch our baby. And I'll do this. It's something for myself. And he was totally supportive of my studies. And through those studies, I came across the midlife transits. Everything just clicked. Why life went to shit. What midlife really means in astrology. And this is where we bring the really cool astrology stuff. There's these midlife transits that happen. And there's 3 of them. Now, the planet Pluto, and a lot of people are like, hello, it's a dwarf planet. Yeah, well, guess what? It's still very relevant in astrology. It still plays a really important role. And he's a little bit of a weirdo because his orbit around the sun is elliptical. And he sometimes comes into the orbit of Neptune, and this changes the order of the midlife transits depending on which decade you're born in. So while the majority of us born in the 20th century will experience Pluto transit first, then Neptune, then Uranus, a lot of you that are born from the 80s onwards, this is going to start to change. In fact, those of you born in the early 80s are going through these transits right now, and you're probably going through the Pluto and Neptune transit at the same time. I know, double whammy, but at least you get it out of the way. What are transits, you may be asking? When you're born and you take your first breath, there's a snapshot taken of the skies of where all the planets are around us. That's your birth chart. And of course, the planets move around from there. They make certain angles to the birth positions of where they are. And that's what is called a transit. So it's actually transited. So by the time you hit 40, Pluto has moved 90 degrees from the position from when it was born. And that's your first midlife transit. Neptune will do the same one about a year or so later. There's your second midlife transit. And then Uranus will be opposite 180 degrees from its natal position, and that's your third midlife transit. You get 3 whammies. And within those whammies, even more whammies. But gosh, they are good. You learn so much about yourself. It's like being reborn, and you come out on the other side better than you were ever before. And I invite listeners of all ages leading up to these transits to listen and engage and understand how these cycles shape identity, purpose, and reinvention. Of course, those that are living through it right now, I hope this helps with the other episodes that are coming up. And for those of you that have passed this, I hope it gives you some insights, because I'm not only going to focus on these midlife transits, I'm going to go ahead in the future. I'm also going to go back in the past to those in their 20s and those in their 30s. Oh yeah, guys, you are going through stuff as well. This is kind of like a life stage podcast. It's not age limited at all. In adolescence, even in childhood. My son's 8 years old. He's going to go through his first Saturn square. And oh boy, he's got some lessons coming up. Tweens, hello. We've got astrological adolescence happening. It's huge. I love to investigate and go more into that. For those of you that have been past their puberty, astrological adolescence can vary from age 11 to 15. It's very different. It depends on everyone's charts. And it's not only just a time of your body changing and hormones, but you learn a lot of things. There's these huge planetary transits that are happening that can shape you for your teen years and how you evolve. Now, speaking of hormones, you're probably thinking, yeah, okay, your midlife might have been, this big thing, and it was for me, and it is generally for a lot of people. But why do you kind of stick on this? And you're talking about all these cycles and everything. Well, before I even understood the transits, I was researching midlife and what was happening, but not really astrology at the time, which is kind of ironic. Now, at the time, I was not a professional astrologer. I was an amateur. I didn't know as much as I know now. And I was amazed at how astrologers could actually work all this stuff out and understand it until I learnt it myself. But I came across all these podcasts and doctors and all these articles, how they were talking about the physiological changes that happen in women, how they change jobs, they change careers, they change their relationships, and all these hormonal shifts that happen that coincide with midlife. When I discovered these midlife transits and how, for want of a better saying, the woo-woo matched up with the science, they don't influence each other, by the way. They just coincidentally match up, but how the woo-woo can indicate things that are happening in the material and scientific world. I'm like, this is cool. This is beyond anything that I can think of. We can discover by looking at all these different aspects and understanding ourselves much better. So we can see with these hormonal changes, with these physiological changes, with the science behind us, with the astrology, we can see midlife. We can see getting older, sagescence. Now, you may be 80 years old. You may be 90 years old. And you will be going through similar transits like midlife. But they're signaling the end. Not necessarily the end, that's it, you're going to die. No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean you're going to go through your third Saturn return, and that's lessons in itself. As long as you live, you will learn. The really cool thing, and the thing that I want to emphasize in this podcast is that all of the things that we're going to talk about is inclusive. It's inclusive across genders, cultures, and spiritual backgrounds. No matter where you come from, you're welcome here. And we all go through similar things. We're all related in some way. We all go through these things, and all we can do is talk about them and understand and remember that we're not alone. So as you can see with what I've been talking about and going on about, my personal story led me here, and I realized I want to talk about this more. I want to get out there and not just say, yes, it's because of this scientific thing, or it's because of that. I want to bring all of it together. One of the great things that's happening right now is that celebrities and all these high-profile figures are talking about perimenopause and menopause, and that's something that does coincide with midlife. And I highly urge you to, if you're going through perimenopause or menopause, or your partner is, to listen to them, because there is some really cool stuff out there for us to understand. And this, again, it's across everyone, every facet of life. And I find by including all of these different facets, based on astrology as well, and bringing that in, but I want to speak more openly about the transformation and the intuition involved and the inner seasons of our lives. I don't want to be part of the generation that just sits there and smiles when you ask questions. True story. Baby shower. When I had my baby shower, I think I was about a month out from giving birth. And I remember all my friends and family, we were all sitting around the room, and I was the star of the show with a belly out here. And I was asking questions, and I would say the majority were already mums. I was one of the last of my friends to have a baby. Had some single friends there, and everyone else was grandmothers. And I would ask these questions, and I'm like, it's going to be like this, right? And they'd all just smile. Dead smiles. You know the look I'm talking about. Smiles. I call it the human resources smiling assassin face, where you've got the smile, but the eyes are saying something else. And I'm like, why aren't they telling me the truth? And the transitions I went through. And I tell my mum, she's a Sagittarian, very blunt Sagittarian. And she's like, well, if I told you, would you have believed me? if I told you may have not done what you have done, what you have accomplished, would you have listened as either? Which is true. But I'd like to have those conversations, but not in a way where you're going to tell someone you're going to turn them off, but to inspire and arm people. I mean, we're all a village, we've got to help each other out. That's the way I see it. And it's like astrology meeting human experience, putting things together, talking about relationships, grief, identity shifts, parenting, career changes, spirituality, health, and the body's wisdom. And a lot of the things I will be talking about will be for those who are born with XX chromosomes or for those who have transitioned to identifying as female. But I don't want to limit to that. I do want to include men and those who identify as male. Yes, bring those Y chromosomes in, because not everyone is talking about men and the transitions they're going through and their midlife. I know, we think midlife crisis. We hear midlife crisis. We're thinking of the balding guy with the aviator sunglasses and in the convertible Ferrari, and you're just like, ooh, Ferrari, and you're looking like, ugh, midlife crisis, because he's the only guy that can afford it. He's worked hard up into his life to afford it. And it's like, finally, I'm going to buy a Ferrari. And that's what a lot of women go through in their midlife. They're like, finally, I'm not going to put up with that crap. I'm going to live the life the way I want to live. Well, why can he, and then why can't we? But in having said that, what has he gone through to feel that way? Because men do carry a lot, but don't talk about it. And I'm hoping to have some amazing guests on that will talk about men in midlife, men in transition, and men's health as well. One thing that I want to do in this episode, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing, how I grew up. My parents would talk about the past a lot. And I sort of have taken that in, pausing for reflection as well. Witnessing and naming our experiences, I find, is actually quite powerful. We find that when we reflect, when we look in hindsight, it gives us foresight. It's healing and it's recalibration. Where I'm coming to you from, Eora country in Sydney, Australia, people don't talk about their emotions. They don't talk about what they're going through. They might have to have a little bit of alcohol. Yeah, quite a bit of alcohol. But it's a cultural thing. Now, I have a Greek background, and our therapy is talking, and talking a lot, over a coffee for hours. And that's just one coffee. If the conversation is really good, we'll go into a second one. We're just like how we do in Greece. And you know what? If you don't have someone to talk to and you just want to listen, this might be your podcast for you, because what you can expect in each episode, I will have solo deep dives, a little bit like this one, midlife themes, guest conversations, story-driven teaching, hopefully, with timely astrological insights. And one thing I absolutely love is the asteroid goddesses and their role in astrology and in our lives. And you're probably thinking, why the asteroids? Well, we see the planets in astrology take on aspects of human themes when they were discovered. And these new emerging themes were in the collective, and just as the asteroids appeared in our lives, they appeared in our consciousness. The asteroids can represent the archetypal feminine principle emerging into mass consciousness. And this is because where the asteroid belt is located, it is between the personal planets, which is Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and towards the generational planets, where we have Saturn and Jupiter. They're more transpersonal, but they're in between, kind of. But the generational ones are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So you'll see when Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto make some big changes, change signs, that's a new generation. When they make these aspects in our midlife and later in life, a whole generation will feel them. So where the asteroids are located in the solar system, it will link what we're going through personally to what we're going through socially and what a generation is experiencing. Pretty much, it's a transformative process from the personal to the collective. Now, the main asteroids are Vesta, Ceres, Juno, and Pallas Athena. And they're all ancient Greek goddesses. They were also in Roman mythology with the same symbolism pretty much. And they were around. The ancient gods were prominent. But then the patriarchy rose and they took a step back. But they waited. They're like, all right, boys, you take care of things. We'll just sit here and watch and eat the popcorn and be a fly on the wall. We'll wait till our time. And it wasn't until the early 1800s when the asteroids were physically discovered, the astronomers named these asteroids after these goddesses. And they're like, this is our chance. And they slowly emerged. And at the time when they were discovered, soon after, women who were really prominent in the suffragette movement were also born. And slowly, very feminine-like, planning with some strategy into bringing up the feminine. Come into the 1970s, when an amazing astrologer Eleanor Buck published the first asteroid ephemeris, bam, that's when we had the feminist movement coming in. We had women re-entering the workforce, taking on these big roles, and it's been growing ever since. And when you become an astrologer and you're studying astrology, you will find something pulls you more than anything else. And for me, that was the asteroid goddesses, because I love how they're inclusive. They talk about cycles. They can represent womanhood, but not just for women. They can represent cycles for men. They can represent cycles for everyone. And they don't exclude anyone. That's the thing. They can explore archetypes such as the mother, maiden, queen, matriarch, or creatrix. I love that word. Healer or guide or sage essence. Not the crone. The crone, yes, but I don't like the word crone. I think it's just a bit, ugh. Sagesse, matriarch. Yeah, that's really good, eh? And having said all that, with this podcast, I want to navigate those messy transitions with honesty. Kind of like normalizing with the complexity. I want to, give listeners permission to be the in-between, to understand things like burnout, identity loss, hormonal changes, relationship shifts, career pivots, and spiritual awakenings. So my vision for this space and our time together is to bring together a community of people who care about self-inquiry and astrology as a guide rather than as a rule book, and a life lived with meaning, curiosity, and courage. I'm really excited to be sharing this podcast with you, these deep conversations that you feel like you're with friends, that you have a bond with, that you can talk about anything with. And I'm hoping you don't have to listen to every single episode, but I'm hoping, well, I'd like you to, that'd be nice to think about it, but that you'll scroll along, find a podcast episode, you'll listen to it, and hopefully you're not fast asleep by now. But if I've sent you to sleep, you're welcome. I hope you have a beautiful sleep. But, while you're listening, you're like, woo, I needed to hear that. You may have gotten up and had a really crappy day, or you might be going through a period of time you're like, oh, something's got to give. But I'm hoping either I or one of my beautiful guests that I'll have on will say something that'll be really inspiring for you and that will help you on your journey. I want to thank you for your time. Next episode will be in a couple of weeks from now. With this first season of this podcast, I'm going to be publishing an episode every 2 weeks, see how we go. I'd like to think that, not that what we'll be talking about will be really heavy, but it'll give you time to digest and look forward to the next episode. But next episode, my very special guest, Michelle Wollaston, will be on. She's also a colleague and a great friend, and she is amazing. And I hope you will join us in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you have a wonderful day. Thank you for spending this time exploring the cosmos within and around us. I am grateful to share these reflections with you, and I hope they offered you a moment of insight, grounding, or reassurance. A special thank you to my producer, Jen Brown of JJ Boots Productions, for her care and support behind the scenes. Intro and outro music, Pulse Width by Tony Vodnik, licensed via Pixabay. If this episode resonated, feel free to share it with someone who may need it. You can find more of my work on my website, Instagram or Substack, where I offer astrology for every stage of life. Until next time, may your path be clear and your inner light steady.